Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Nick here with Sales Knowledge, and I do apologize because it has been so long since I've recorded the last video, but we are back and we're going to be trying to create consistent content that you guys have been asking for, which I do appreciate all the support in the comments, the subscriptions, the likes. Everything means a lot to me, and you guys should continue to comment and ask for things that you would like to see. But without further ado, we're going to be going on from the sales development representative role into the next progression, which would be an inside sales representative or an account executive. These are typically what they're called, and what we're going to be referencing in this video. So the topics that we're going to be going over in this video would be the explanation of the inside sales representative or account executive role, different team layouts that you might see, how to land the role as an ISR, how to execute in that role, key performance indicators and metrics, different pay ranges, and your progression to either a senior account executive, subject matter expert, or a major account executive. What is an ISR? How we're going to explain the role of the inside sales representative is that it's a full cycle sales job. That means that you're taking a lead from its creation, either something that you got passed on from your sales development team, or something that you had to cold call into to produce yourself. And then you would take that opportunity, qualify it further, pin a product or a service to it that aligns with your prospect's challenges, quote them, do some price negotiation, and then eventually close the deal. If you don't have a sales development team, or even if you do, you might still be expected to do your own cold prospecting, which would include cold calling and cold emails, maybe assisting with certain campaigns that your marketing team is working on. Additionally, you'll have to qualify outbound and inbound opportunities that you can then further push into your pipeline and make sure your funnel is a lot tighter so you don't have a lot of opportunities that are just fluff. Opportunities that are not real, will never come to close. You want to actually make sure that those are out of your pipeline. You'll also additionally be setting meetings for yourself from opportunities that you either generate or from opportunities that you get from the sales development team for discovery calls, maybe demo calls, procurement calls, and things of that nature. And like I said before, it is a full cycle sales position, so you're going to be taking opportunities from open to close. Now, there might be a couple of different team layouts that you might see in different organizations, and I've done both of these, so I have experience with both, and if you have questions about them, please let me know. But the first layout that we usually see here is a shared territory between an ISR and a major account executive. So the inside sales representative might handle deals under a certain dollar value. So for example, you might be presented with a comp plan that only allows you to handle deals under $25,000 a year. That those deals would be under the inside sales representative, and anything larger might be something that you work on, but it might end up going to the major account executive that would have to meet with that person or that opportunity team in person, so they can handle those deals on an outside level. But you might actually help with the account management, and then you might actually share the quota together. So any deals that you might close will go towards the team quota of you and the major account executive, and then vice versa. So anything that the major account executive closes might go towards that quota as well. So you're working together to get to the same end goal. And this is usually, like I said, a cooperative effort. And it can end up being more supportive in the sense that if you're the inside sales representative in this situation, you might end up having to help the outside rep a lot more than you're handling your own opportunities. So you might have to develop more opportunities for that outside sales representative. And I've been in this situation before. Sometimes it can be a little bit frustrating depending on who you're paired with. However, it can be a very good learning experience if you don't have the experience that that senior person might have. In addition to that first layout, we also see a different configuration that is a little bit more straight cut. And you would have different accounts for different representatives that they each go after. So these would usually be segmented as verticals. And there might be verticals like the finance industry, e-commerce, so sites that sell stuff online, the public sector, so government and education, and just stuff like that. And the ISR might only handle new accounts, meaning that these customers have never bought anything from your company before, and you're trying to onboard them as a, air quotes, new customer. And then you might actually get comped on bringing a number of new customers on for the year, so your target might be something like 1 per month or something along those lines. And then once you've onboarded those customers, the major account executives or the account managers might handle those customers after you've onboarded them, and then they can upsell into those accounts and manage the renewals. And your quota would be more individualized. So if you like the idea of being more of an individual contributor, this might be something you want to specifically seek out, because your quota is going to be clearly tied to your performance as an individual. If you're closing a lot of deals and you know you're a strong performer, then this is something that you would ideally want. However, this might lead to less collaboration between you and the outside reps, so it might be less of a learning experience for you in that sense, and it might be harder for you to learn from them. So just something to consider there. To land the role, there's a couple of different requirements here that might be important to your specific situation. It really depends on the individual and the company, but we'll try to keep it a little bit general here to kind of cover a lot of bases. In a lot of companies, we see that 4-year degrees are highly preferred, not always required. This can be due to where you live. If you live in a metropolitan area, so like the DC area, the LA area, New York, Chicago areas, you might more likely see a 4-year degree being highly preferred. There's also the option of how many years of experience that you might have being taken into consideration, but a 4-year degree might be very helpful for you to at least land an interview. But if you do have sales development experience, then that might help you get into the door. 1 to 2 years of sales development or business development experience is going to be extremely helpful for you in this role, because it does take a lot of the concepts that you have learned while doing those positions and then expands on to the full cycle side of things. So you're going to be able to take the lead generation portion of it and then advance that into full cycle selling. Things that you're going to want to really show that you can do or present is more in-depth understanding of the solutions, which would include doing a lot of research on the technical side of things. Being able to understand these things on a high level is really important. If you can't really show that you have any sort of technical aptitude in your selling technology, that's going to be a big slight against you, just because there's a lot of people out there that can at least understand it on a high enough level to talk about it for 10 to 15 minutes in a conversation and at least understand where a prospect might be heading as far as what kind of stuff that they might potentially buy. And then to additionally think about is you want to be able to formulate an account strategy. How would you target specific accounts? How would you prioritize them? Would you be calling into the C levels, the D levels, as far as executives go? So CEO, CIO, CFO, CTO, and things like that. And then also director level. And also, how would you prioritize accounts for different types of marketing strategies? So if you know that, for example, in the education space, it might be best to target them in a different way because they have less money usually to spend on technology. So you might want to target them in a different way, and being able to express that is going to be very helpful for you. Just like sales development, though, you also want to be able to show that you're hungry and you're really looking forward to hunting into new accounts, because it is kind of like pioneering a new path. You have to really sometimes think outside of the box to be able to onboard new customers and really adapt to the way each customer thinks, and be really light on your feet in that regard. But you can't just be hungry. You also have to be able to take criticism quite well. Being coachable is extremely important, because you're going to have to learn a lot, as at this point in your career, you're not very senior. You haven't done much, if at all, full cycle selling. So it's something that you're going to have to be open to criticism about, how you can actually close deals better and get opportunities through your funnel. So taking it from a qualified opportunity to pinning them on a solution that fits their problems, quoting them, price negotiation, and then closing. And then, of course, like I always say, is that you want to make sure that you come prepared. You want to have a resume with your relevant experience, and you want to have all of the information as far as certifications and education, as well as references on your resume. And you can include that in a packet. And I'll be talking about this in a later video because I think it's quite important. But having that available to them, bringing that in person, is going to show that you thought forward about that and you actually had it ready for them. In addition to that, I also like to have a sheet of questions. And these questions will be anything from simply just asking about what the team dynamics are about, or a little bit more of a kind of a psychological question is to ask them why they joined the company in the first place. So this might be with the hiring manager, or it might be with a peer, a potential peer that you might be working with. So really kind of getting a broad range of questions out there so you can learn as much as possible and be as informed as possible. On top of that, you also want to make sure that you look the part. So that means you want to be dressed appropriately. For men, that would be a suit and tie with some nice dress shoes. Do your hair properly, shave, do whatever you need to do to look clean and prepared. And then for women, the applicable clothing for a similar look. And then obviously emphasizing the ability to handle the entire cycle. So even if you haven't done full cycle selling before, understand what those steps are and how you would get from each step, because that's probably something they're going to ask you about. Why should we take you over somebody internal, or why should we take you over this other guy that maybe has a little bit of experience with full cycle selling? So it's something that you need to be prepared to respond to, really looking and understanding what the sales funnel is. Like I said before, the steps from going from a qualified opportunity to closing it. To execute in this role, there's going to be a lot of different things that you're going to have to manage, and it can actually be probably the most tedious at times, because there's a lot of things that you have to do to be successful. The number one thing would definitely be lead development. Outbound generation, so doing your own cold calling and own cold emailing is going to be super important, and making sure that you utilize that time properly. Blocking out 1 to 2 hours of your day specifically for that purpose might be very helpful for you to achieve your goals of bringing in new opportunities and then closing them, because sometimes you might not get very good inbound opportunities, or your sales development team is not very functional, so you have to do that yourself. In addition to that, you might also not have a sales development team, and any inbound leads you might get, you might have to handle them yourself. I've been in that situation before. I've had to do both. It's definitely manageable. You just have to make sure that you prioritize your time properly and just use your calendar to your advantage. And sometimes you might see that there's opportunities to upsell into current accounts. This might be something that is in your comp plan. It's not always the case, though, depending on the organization. If they have major account executives handling all current accounts, that might not be something you're handling. You'll have to figure that out on your own, though. And like I keep saying, is that you'll have to execute on the full progression of going through all the sales stages. So you're going to have to reinforce the budget, authority, need, and timeline, which is the BANT, and making sure that your sales development team did a good job with that. So just double checking with the customer on those things, and really doing a good job of understanding what their business challenges are. If you don't understand their business challenges from the get-go, there's really no reason to further the conversation in trying to sell them a product. If you don't even know what their problems are, you really can't sell them anything, and you're probably just spinning your wheels. So you might want to take a couple steps back and try to figure those things out first. Once you've figured out the problem that you're trying to solve, you need to look at your portfolio and maybe sometimes get a little bit creative with how you would implement one of these products or services, and then align it to that problem. You would then try to present that for their specific use case, and then move forward potentially with a trial or proof of concept, which is basically the same thing. Sometimes a proof of concept might be paid, in the sense that a organization might have to pay your engineering or your services team to stand that up. You may also have to produce your own quotes, depending on the organization. In smaller organizations, you might have to just do your own quotes, which might be done in a CRM like Salesforce, or it might be something that you have to put into a PDF on your own, or maybe you even work with partners on. It's really kind of just company dependent at that point. You might have to do that yourself, or you might go to a sales analyst or something called Deal Desk, the people that put the deals together and analyze the financial part of it, and you work with them as a team to get that quote out to the customer. You'll also have to work with them, work with the customer on price negotiation, making sure that you maintain a certain level of revenue, basically just not discounting products continuously, and trying to just get the sale no matter what. You do want to actually maintain a decent average selling price as you are to compare with your coworkers. If you compare well with your coworkers on the average selling price, that will look good for you at that company for sure. And if you can display when you're going potentially to interview at other companies that your average selling price is quite high, they will definitely receive that as a good thing and realize that you're not somebody that is trying to get deals only through discounts, and that price is not the only way for you to sell, which definitely should not be the case. And then, of course, closing those opportunities, understanding the conversion ratio at which you're doing that. So making sure that if you have a lot of qualified opportunities, that you're not letting them slip out from underneath you, and that you're actually closing a good amount of opportunities, and that you're doing it in a reasonable amount of time. So if the expectation is that it's a 60 to 90 day selling cycle, is that you're truly meeting those numbers, and you're not letting too many outliers occur where it might go on to 6 months or even a year. To continue on the execution portion, it's really important to make sure that you continue your learning. So that might be doing some modules, some training that your company has internally for your solutions and services. That just might look like some engineering stuff where they run through a demo and show you the UI, and understanding a lot of different use cases, understanding how the technology works with other technologies that you don't even sell, and just making sure that you can fit your solutions and services into almost any customer's environment, and really understanding the ins and outs in that manner. It also might be helpful to be able to demo products. It's something that I've taken upon myself, and I find it very useful if you can demo the product on your own, because sometimes you might not be able to have an engineer do that for you, whether that be because you have too few of engineers, or you might actually be incentivized with a better commission rate to demo the product yourself and not utilize engineering resources. On top of that, you would probably want to shadow your outside reps. See if it's possible that you can maybe join them on a couple of meetings. This is going to be something that will definitely help you look better in front of your management, showing that you are actually looking for a career path in sales where you actually want to progress to the outside. And then, of course, you would probably want to invite your senior management on your calls if you think that they are good with customers and they will actually show you something beneficial. It's really good to be able to see the different angles, as they might be very experienced at that company, and be able to show you different ways that you could position products and solutions, and also overcome a lot of rejection and barriers in the conversations that you might be having. So it's a useful tool, especially when you don't know how to solve something, to have your senior management join you on your calls. Moving on to the key performance indicators and metrics. There's a number of different things that might be included in this section, so I kind of added a number of them that may or may not apply to you. But usually, total activity is really important. Responding to inbound leads that you either have to handle yourself or ones that are handed to you from your sales development team. Making sure that you're still self-generating outbound leads, doing your cold prospecting, and getting a decent amount of those into your pipeline. It does show that you're proactive, and it will reflect positively. Also, making sure that your conversion ratio of opportunities that you had in your pipeline to closed opportunities is fairly good. One of the better metrics to use out there is that you should have a 3-to-1 pipeline to closed opportunities ratio. So making sure that you constantly are able to fill opportunities that might be disqualified throughout the process, whether it's because of price or it's not something that will happen in a certain time frame, with something else that could potentially close in your quarter or your year. And of course, with a full cycle selling role, it would be very important to recognize what your quota is, and that's usually going to be on a revenue basis, whether that looks like a monthly recurring revenue number or a monthly a yearly subscription number, or it might be like a perpetual license, something of that sort, which would mean that they buy the license once, and then there's a renewal that is added on top of that every year or so to keep that product updated. So that number is going to be pretty static. It might be something like $1 million, and you have to reach that number throughout the year. Usually you would also have quarterly goals, something like $250,000 a quarter, or if your vertical is very backloaded or something like that, where the end of the year is when a lot of financial decisions are made, then maybe the fourth quarter of your year might have a higher quota associated with it for that quarter. it really just depends on how the company operates at that point. You might also see that there's a monthly business objective or a yearly business objective for a number of new customers that you onboard, as it usually does fall to the responsibility of the inside sales rep to get new customers and bring them to the company and get them onboarded. And then it would be the responsibility of a major account executive to then take that upon themselves to maintain the account and grow the account further. But that might be a number that you see something like 1 per month. So you might be required to get 12 new customers in a year. And then you might get a flat rate per each of those customers. Something like $300 to $1,000 or something like that. Depending on also what the role entails specifically for your case, you might be able to upsell into current accounts. That would really just roll up to your revenue number, and that would help towards achieving your quota. And then the last thing you maybe will see on your comp plan would be a number of trials or proof of concepts that you conducted. However, this is not something that you're going to see too often, just because of the trials and proof of concepts being run by engineers usually, and that's something that they're usually comped on. So it's something that you might see, but probably not. Moving on to the pay range, we see a pretty large pay range here, and this is due to either where you live, how far along you are in your career, the company, the commission structure, what kind of products or services are you selling, and it can really come down to anywhere between $80,000 a year to $160,000. That's probably the typical range that I would see. I started at the $80,000 a year range, and then I worked my way up to about $160,000 a year, and that's what I would say is typical across the board, at least in software as a service. It's usually going to be a simple base to commission ratio. I would say a lot of times it's usually a 50-50 ratio or a 60-40 ratio. It really depends on what the expectation of the role is, but sometimes you might even see something that's more heavily weighted towards the commission. Startups, it might be something really crazy where it could actually be a $50K base and then a $100K commission. So it really depends on what the expectations of the role are, how much they want you to expand their business, and what the commission rates would be. Those commission rates might be anywhere from 1 to 10%. This really depends on the size of the deals. So if you're selling really large deals, that might actually lead you to a smaller commission rate. But there are cases where definitely at startups or companies that are a little bit more sales oriented, they might give you a better commission rate. I know I've seen in my personal offer letters, I've seen commission rates from about 3% all the way up to 10%. And depending on the average selling price of each deal, this is something that could change quite drastically. So, and like I've said before, the startups might have better commission rates, but you also have to consider that the smaller install base and the smaller customer base of a startup would have its downsides, but it might have a potential for a really high earning year. You'll also want to consider overachievement in this role. Unlike sales development representatives, you'll have a true opportunity to overachieve on a commission basis. Sometimes you might see in your plans, if it's uncapped, that you'll actually be able to reach something called an accelerator. And these accelerators will ramp up depending on how far you've overachieved past your quota. So if you reach over your quota, you might get a 25% increase in commission. So if your commission rate is 10%, you might get a 12.5% commission rate. If you get double your quota, then you might reach a 100% increase in commission. So you might be paid at a 20% commission rate. So that could actually get you into the couple $100,000 a year range if you have a really good year. I've definitely seen instances where there's inside sales reps that have made $1 million a year. So it is possible, but it's pretty unlikely, and there's a good amount of luck associated with having a deal that's so large that you get paid a great amount of commission for it. On top of all of this, there might be times when you see a senior inside sales representative making almost $180,000 to $200,000 a year per their compensation plan. I would say that's pretty rare, and that's usually somebody that's been doing it for 10 years, and that number is actually still a good amount lower than somebody that's done outside sales for just a couple of years. So it's possible to make $200,000 on your plan as an inside sales rep, but it's usually not the best way of going about it. And lastly, we're going to be talking about how to progress from an inside sales representative or an account executive to the next level, which would be either a senior account executive, which is usually more of the same thing, and that might include you just getting better territory, or you might get higher level opportunities in the sense that your deal sizes are not going to be as limited. Instead of maybe handling $25,000 or less opportunities, you may be able to handle unlimited size deal opportunities or up to $250,000 or something like that. This is something that's really kind of unknown. It's maybe just a higher paying job altogether. I can't really say for sure. There's a lot of variables that go into that. But you also have something more of like a subject matter expert, where that would be something maybe a little bit more technically focused, where you're really focusing on a specific product, and that specific product would be something that you would have to be an expert on, and you would actually cover a large amount of accounts and help inside sales reps and outside sales reps sell a specific solution. So if your company sells web application firewalls, DDoS mitigation solutions, as well as something incident response related, then you might sell only one of those things and only get comped on one of those things, and you might have a really big quota, but you have a lot of people with a lot of territory that you could help sell into. So it's something to consider. And then you also have your more classic account executive that is more of an account manager type of role, which is your major account executive. And you would be able to upsell and manage renewals of larger accounts and really just work on building out the current accounts that you have and making them as large as possible. So how would you go about really getting into one of these roles? The first thing that is kind of insinuated, but I didn't put it on here, is getting a couple of years of inside sales experience. I would say normally about 3 to 5 years is the range that you would be looking at. That's a good point to work with. And making sure that you can meet and exceed your quota when it's given to you. If you can show that you can do that, then they will definitely think about giving you the opportunity for one of these other roles if one becomes available internally, and then you might be able to apply for that and get that role. In addition to that, you'd be expected to be more technically knowledgeable, being able to be more self-sustainable in opportunities where you have to talk about the solutions in a more in-depth manner. I would also urge you to take on as many outside responsibilities when you possibly can. That's going to show that you have an initiative, that you're proactive, doing things like going to trade shows, and then also meeting key customers when you absolutely can. So if a customer is maybe only an hour away from you, I would ask your manager and see if you can actually drive to meet that customer in person, do your presentation, and have a discussion with them in person, even if it's something that you're a little bit uncomfortable with. you should still be trying to do those things when you can. Also, making sure that you're persistent with your management. Having a lot of persistence is going to go a long way. Showing that you're still dedicated and willing to grow the business is going to go a long way with your management. And also just checking in with them to see if there's anything that you can do to put yourself in a position to get a promotion. Territory planning is also going to be extremely important. I talked about this a little bit before, but making sure that you're targeting the right accounts and understanding the best bang for your buck with your time, knowing that if you're going to reach out to X account, that it's actually a much better opportunity for you to keep on nurturing and getting through the sales cycle over Y account, which might be something that is not likely to close. You'll also be expected to lead your team on a lot of different opportunities. So making sure that you're including your engineer when needed. Also bringing in your management to help you out with rejections when you feel it is appropriate. And then also bringing in other additional resources like your subject matter experts or even executive level people when you're talking to the right accounts. If you have a really large account that you're going to be talking to an executive level with, then you might want to bring one of your executives from your company to that account to really give a good impression that you actually care about them as a potential customer. And then, of course, on top of that, you want to show that you're managing your pipeline in a very effective manner. You might have something like a weekly pipeline meeting where you're showing that you're staying on top of what is in your pipeline. So looking at your current opportunities, understanding where they are in the sales cycle, how likely they are to close. Are you ready to commit that as an opportunity that will close? And making sure that those dollar amounts are appropriate and that you're putting in your calls and meetings and all the different things that go along with getting stuff through the sales cycle into your CRM tool. And with that, I will ask you guys to leave any questions that you might have in the comments. Anything that you are curious about or would like to know more about, please put it in the comments. I will be reading them and I'll answer them as I find time, which should be pretty often. And if you would like to see more content like this, please do also let me know. Feel free to throw me a like and also subscribe if you would like to see some more content. But anyways, I really appreciate you guys stopping by to learn a little bit more. I know it's been about 40 minutes. It's a long video, but hopefully it was useful for you on your journey to becoming an inside sales representative or account executive. Thank you very much.